So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very special presentation with Kathleen Pahinui, who very graciously offered to share some of her insight into what is happening with Red Hill and how this all relates to our aquifers and us. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Kathleen.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. It's easier at home. At work, I have two monitors and I get very confused at times. What's showing and what's not showing. Okay, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time tonight. I know everybody's busy, but this is a very important issue for all of us. This is our water supply, and without a good water supply, we don't exist. You can't go more than about 3 days without fresh water before you start feeling the effects of it. Oh, come on, why don't you? There we go. So I'm going to do a little water 101 about our geology of our island. So our island, we all know we're on a volcanic island. Volcanic rock is very porous. Basalt, it's full of nooks and crannies. If you think of a big sponge, is a good way to look at it. That's where the water collects. So we have the zone of salt water, the zone of mixture, which we know is brackish water. And then we have our fresh water, which sits on top of it because it's lighter. And so it floats on top of that zone of mixture. And I just wanted to know if, I'm trying to see if I can get a pointer going here. I'm sorry, just looking for that for a second. I don't seem to be able to do that. Okay.
I saw something there. Your cursor's there.
Yeah. Oh, you can't see my cursor?
Yes, you can follow that.
Okay, great. Okay, come on. Sorry. Okay, good. Thank you. So we have three ways that we get water from the fresh water from the island. We have what we call dike zones. These are large slabs of rock that get pushed up as the volcanic magma comes up. They're large things and they form like slate walls, and the water collects between the walls of these dikes. If you've ever been on our Waihe'e tour out in Kaneohe, that is a dike system. We have a number of these on the windward side. We have some up in the Waianae area, and we have a couple in Manoa. And these are usually higher up and they're gravity fed. So we don't need pumps to fill the system. They kind of just come down by themselves. Another way that we get fresh water, we pump out water, is an inclined shaft. It skims the top of the surface of the water. Again, if you've ever been on our Halawa Shaft tour, that's an inclined shaft. And that, of course, is the shaft that we're most concerned about right now. The majority of our water resources are deep wells, dug straight. They're straight vertical wells that are cased and go right into the ground. And then, of course, we're all familiar with artesian wells as well. The one thing we're very blessed with on the island of Oahu is we have something called caprock that runs around the island and it's very thick in certain areas. And I have a map to show you of that in a minute. Caprock is marine sediment that has kind of gotten together. It's sticky and it's thick like clay. And it forms a very almost impermeable barrier. And the great thing about the caprock, it keeps all the fresh water from leaking out and keeps it from mixing with the salt water. And because we're an older island, we have a lot of good caprock. I believe Kauai does too. The Big Island less so because it's a newer island and it doesn't have as much because it takes many, many years, millions of years for this caprock to accumulate. This shows our caprock, the light blue going around. This is all the caprock. And if you know, like where Campbell Industrial Park is, I believe they're like over the caprock. And one of the reasons that it's a good place, what we recommend for the Navy to move the tanks is over. They have a couple of locations on the base that they identified in their tank study. They're over the caprock. So if they were to remove those tanks or build new tanks above ground, double lined, over the caprock, we would never have we wouldn't worry at all, because if there was ever a leak, first of all, it would get caught between the two walls of the tank, or if it did get out, the caprock, it's not going to get into either our ocean or into our fresh water. So that's why we say they need to move it from over the aquifer. This is what we mean when we say move it from over the aquifer over onto an area over the cap rock. And luckily for us, a lot of the military that are on the shore, they're right over the cap rock. So it's not impossible for that to be done. This map is from the Commission on Water Resource Management, and it shows the different aquifer sections. So one of the things that people think is that we have separate, unique aquifers across the island. That is not the case. The aquifer on our island is one big geologic formation underneath the island. Again, think of a big sponge with lots of holes, nooks and crannies, where the water flows through and collects in various pockets. These lines that you see on the map are strictly for administrative purposes. They allow the Commission on Water Resource Management to manage the water under what we call the sustainable yield, and allows them to ensure that we're not taking more out of the aquifer than we need, and that we're protecting our resource, we're managing it well, and we're not taking, again, more than we need, that we're, really doing the right thing by it. So one of the things that you notice here is that these numbers tell you how much water you can pull out of each of the different areas. And right here in the Pearl Harbor area, there's a lot of water that can be pulled out of here. It's one of the highest producing areas. It's just a really good area. A lot of water collects in this area. And if you know your history, pre-contact, it was a very thriving area with lots of estuaries, fish ponds, and also taro. It was a very high producing area because of the fact there was a lot of fresh water there. And some of you know Sumita's watercress farm still there, right between the two arms of Pearl Ridge. So it was a very, very productive, high productive, and it still is to this day. And that's one of the reasons why we're so concerned about this resource, because Red Hill Field Facility sits right on the boundary between these two sectors of the aquifer. And you can pull out about 166 million gallons a day. Actually, the sustainable yield's a little bit higher than that. If you head east, it's much lower. You can see in Waialae East, it's only about 2 million gallons. And as we saw in the previous one, the cap rock is thinner here. It's very thick. Remember, it's very thick over here. So we have a big, thick lens of water. And it's really, and that's why it's so important to us. And this fuel facility lays right on top of it. Here's a quick, again, 20 tanks in the ridge line right above Pearl Harbor. The tanks about 100 feet above the groundwater. 16 of them are in active use right now. 2 have been permanently decommissioned, and 2 are out of, I believe, in cleaning or some sort of inspection that they're doing. So they have about 180 million gallons of jet fuel and diesel fuel in these tanks over our aquifer currently. This is a more schematic diagram of the Red Hill facility. Again, here are your tanks. Here is the Red Hill Shaft. That's the one that was so highly polluted. I'm sure you've all seen the videos on TV of all the scum floating on top with the divers going in. It's pretty awful. Well, what's really interesting, and I did not know this, I actually took the tour before the holidays with Congressman Kahele and some of the other elected officials. I was lucky enough to go down there. And it is, I have to say, it's an impressive facility. It's very impressive, but it's old. And the thing that people don't realize, and I did not realize literally until that day I was there, you come down this dotted line. It's a long, about, I forget how long it is, something like 3 miles or something you can walk, but it's a long tunnel. You pass all the different tanks. They're all set off in recesses. And you come down and you're walking. And all of a sudden there's this little tunnel off to the side. That's where the drinking water is. That's where Red Hill Shaft is. It is literally co-located where the 20 fuel tanks are. I always thought from the maps, you look at the maps and you see the tanks here and then you see this dot down here showing the shaft. It's actually in the same fuel facility, and I had no idea. Now, remember when they built this was back in the 40s. People didn't think like we do today. They had different priorities back then, but that's one of the reasons why it's probably so polluted and why it looked the way it looked on the TV. but that was pretty eye-opening when I saw that. Here's another about 10,000 feet up. It just kind of orients everybody. Here again, it's a fuel facility. Here's our Halawa Shaft across Halawa Valley. It's about less than a mile away. Here's the Navy's Red Hill Shaft. And these are the two other wells that we also closed down when the Navy's own IAEA Halawa Shaft, they thought had issues. And we're still not sure what's going on with that one. And that's located somewhere in this vicinity over by the animal quarantine station. So this just kind of gives you an idea of the location of all the various facilities and why we're so concerned. We have noticed there have been times when they've had to shut down Halawa, Red Hill Shaft for various repairs, and we'll be pumping over at Halawa, and then we'll notice, like USGS will notice that there's a difference in the water level, that the Red Hill, even though they're not pumping and we're pumping, they see that the level of the water changes. So we know groundwater is connected, it flows, and so it's clearly we're affecting the level across the valley. I'm so sorry. We know that we're affecting the level across the valley when we pump. And this is the very reason why Mr. Lau stopped pumping when he found out Red Hill was stopped, because he was very concerned that we would end up pulling any contamination across the valley. And as you know, that when the Navy tested the water, the levels of contamination were astronomical. They were very, very high. And that's, again, one of the reasons we shut this off. And then when we thought they have, and we're still not sure what's going on with their IAEA Halawa Shaft, but he went ahead and shut these two down as well, just to be on the safe side. Again, as a precautionary measure, we just didn't want to take any chances. As you know, the Navy has it, and this is the Navy's own risk assessment that came out a couple of years ago. And they say there's a 27% probability of a sudden release greater than between 1,000 and 30,000 gallons of fuel each year. And as unfortunately as we witnessed, that seems to be happening on an annual basis, where they have these, leaks of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Now, of course, it looks like they've lost about 19,000 this last time. And then they said it looks like a 34% of a sudden release of 120,000 gallons in the next 100 years. Now that seems like, oh, it's 100 years, 34. That's not. Statistical analysis says this number, the 100 years, and this number, this is not a good ratio, because 34% next to 100 years is pretty high. If this number were 1,000 years or 10,000 years, not less concerning, still concerning, but less likely to happen. The fact this could happen in 100 years at 34%, if that's not a good ratio, it's not a good number, right? And they're also looking at a 5% probability of a sudden release of 1 million gallons in 100 years. Again, concerning numbers. They expect, again, the Navy's own consultant said that they expect chronic releases of about 5,800 gallons per year. Over 25 years, that's almost a little over 145,000 gallons of fuel, jet fuel and diesel fuel, into the water system that you drink from. This is just a quick summary of the recent releases, the ones that happened in May, and then again in November, the ones that are being investigated by the Navy. They're trying to figure out what happened. They think, and they have a bunch of theories, but the prevailing theory is somehow that these are linked together. And they have recently said that it looks like it was closer to 19,000 gallons of diesel fuel or jet fuel that was released, not the 14,000 as originally thought. Our water system is huge, it's big, and this is, again, one of the reasons why we're so concerned. Today, Hawaii News Now came out, the Pearl City Peninsula housing, they took a sample of the houses, and they discovered a hydrocarbon chemical in there at levels that are 2 times the emergency allowed. I think it was 650 parts per billion. So now they're going to have to go back and figure out, are they going to reflush those homes? What are they going to do? One of the concerns we have is that if it gets into the pipes, and especially plastic pipes, plastic loves oil. They love each other, and it clings to the surfaces. If you've ever tried to wash a Tupperware tub after having spaghetti sauce in it for a while, or salad dressing, you know what I mean? You have to use quite a bit of soap and get in there and really scrub it out to get all the grease out and all the oil. So plastic loves oil. So that's why, not that we have a lot of plastic in our system, but we have enough that would make us concerned. But be that as it may, even with metal pipes, you don't want oil flowing through it. So that's why we're so concerned. We do not want to get this into our system. The Navy has 93,000 people who've been affected by this. We service 1 million people daily, about 145 million gallons of water. So that would be catastrophic in ways that you can't even begin to think about. So this is, again, our system. We have 2,100 miles of pipe that we work on every day. We are now up to 172. We just built another new reservoir. And our reservoirs hold about, I believe, a little over 200 million gallons of water on average. This is our metro system. This is the system that's been affected by Halawa Shaft. And this actually affects you guys being in Region 1, probably all of you. We're right up here. Here's Halawa Shaft. It serves 20% of our water resources to the Honolulu metro system. We do have other pumps here, Kalihi, Beretania, Wilder, and Kaimuki, but they're not enough to service, which is why years and years ago, they brought Halawa online and started pumping it into Metro Honolulu, because these pumps could no longer handle the growth of what was happening in Honolulu proper. So with the loss to Halawa, we do have another resource down here, Moanalua, that pumps water in through a 42-inch main, I believe. But we're going to have to pump these wells more. And by pumping them more means we run the risk of them getting salty, salinity. So we have to now take regular tests, chloride tests, to ensure that we're not over pumping them so they don't get salty. And again, this system goes all the way around, just around the corner to Makapu'u. So it's a big deal for us, and we're going to be looking at conservation measures. In fact, we've already started conservation messaging, which is not normal for us. We usually don't start until mid to late summer when it really gets hot and dry. But we know now that we have to go out. So we've got some programs that we're going to be working around that I'll touch on in a minute. So this water use versus source supply, it's a balancing act. You know, we have to make sure we have enough water to deliver to our customers, but we can't overly negatively impact the source, because that source is for all of us, and we need to protect it, not just for today, but for the future, for our children. And with the loss of the 20%, again, balancing that water use with supply is now going to become even more critical. So we know conservation works. Back in the 80s, we were growing and the water use was getting higher. We had about 740,000 people. We were using 175 million gallons of water per day. With aggressive conservation messaging and resources, we were able to bring that down about 2010, dropped it by a little over 16%, about 17%. Our goal is, on average these days, like our December water usage was only about 126 million gallons per day. So you can see we're using a whole lot less water than we did back in the 80s, some nearly 40 years ago. So we know conservation works. We know when everybody pulls together, we can make this happen and we can protect our water resources. And we think, you know, with careful management, we should be able to make up that 20%. So some of the things we recommend are our famous 7 tips. You've probably all seen this in our TV commercials and around town and advertising over the many years. And these are key 7 tips, that simple things that people can do. I do these at home, and I've dropped my water bill significantly over the years because I try very hard not to, to follow these 7 things. So 7 things. We did focus groups years ago, and people said, just tell us what to do and we'll do it. So we did. So this is what we came up with. So we find that these things work. And irrigation is really one of the biggest issues that we have. People watering their lawns, overwatering their lawns, watering their lawns in the middle of the day, which does no good at all, because you're just burning your grass, and the water just evaporates before it really even hits the grass. So in summary, we shut down the wells and the shaft because of the contamination. We don't want to get that hydrocarbon chemicals into our water system. And therefore, we're going to keep them shut off until further notice, until we absolutely feel safe that we can turn Halawa Shaft back on and not pull chemical contamination over. It will stay off, which means we are looking at alternative wells. We're looking at conservation. We are rolling out a very robust commercial rebate program that's going to be starting very shortly. One of the other programs that my team developed is we're going to be working with large condominiums throughout Metro Honolulu to help them manage their water use. Because when you live in a condo, you don't get a water bill. You pay a HOA fee or a homeowner's fee, right? Or a maintenance fee. You don't see what the water costs. So the thought processes regarding water conservation aren't the same as when you own your home, own a single family home. So we're going to be reaching out what we call to the hard to reach resident water user, and really try to get people to understand that no matter where you live, whether it's in a townhome, a condo, or single family, we all need to malama the water. We all need to watch our water use and what we're doing. So that will be rolling out very shortly too. We've pulled the top 20 largest water users in Metro Honolulu, and we'll be reaching out and talking to them. So we're being very aggressive in all of our outreach and what we can do to get people all on board. Because what we want to do is, if we can get through the summer and not have any major issues and not have to go to mandatory conservation, we'll be really, really happy. We'll be thrilled. So we're really going to try and work with the community on all of these various initiatives that we have. Again, we want them to relocate the fuel away from the aquifer. As I explained earlier, we think that's the safest thing to do, build it above ground, put in all the appropriate measures, and it should be fine. And then again, promote the conservation. So that is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
All right. You do have a couple of questions in chat.
I see Gary Gill. Hi, Gary. Nice to see you, sir.
So you have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Kathleen, one has to do with the wording. You said that the state monitors water usage to make sure that we do not take more than we need versus not taking more fresh water than is replenished to the aquifers. Are there any concerns regarding depletion?
Regarding, excuse me?
Depletion?
Depletion. Not at this time. We're, as again, I said, we're blessed with a very robust water system. And through careful management, you know, the Water Commission on Water Resource, that's what they do. And we're not allowed to take more than they allow us to. And they go back every few years, take a look at what the sustainable yields are to make sure that the supply and balance is there. We've actually on this island have reached points where we've almost depleted. Back in the 1920s, we actually had issues. And that's the whole reason the Board of Water Supply was started in the first place, was to remove the politics from water so we could just make sure that people were getting water, fresh, clean water on a regular basis. Also, we had severe droughts and issues back in the 1800s where we were starting to severely deplete our water resources too. So we very careful. We have a whole group of guys that always are looking at our water sources. We work closely with the state, with the Department of Health, with the USGS, and we do studies and things all the time to ensure that we're not doing anything that would harm the system.
Okay, I'll take one more question from chat, and then we'll go to Gary and then go back to chat. So the next one is, are you going to create a bill for each resident?
A bill.
So that they can see.
Oh, actually, you can do that now. If you look at your water bill, you can see how your water uses, how your water uses each month. There's a little chart on, I believe it might be on the back of your bill or the front, I can never remember. But it shows you your monthly water use. You can also go online. If you sign up for our self-service online portal, you can check your water usage every month. And then we also have something called Water Smart, which you can compare your water usage to your neighbors. We don't send out any personal information, but it shows you the average use in your neighborhood and how you compare to your neighbors.
Cool. Gary.
Kathleen, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm curious as to whether the Board of Water Supply has a position on what it would take to treat the polluted water from Red Hill, or God forbid, the petroleum gets into one of the Board of Water Supply wells. As we all probably know, Board of Water Supply treats water out of central Oahu because of contamination from agricultural pesticides. Can this same carbon filtration system be used to remove petroleum from our drinking water? And if so, at what concentration?
You know, I'm not an expert at that. I know we have some concerns. I'm sorry, Ernie and Erwin are really the experts in that question. Great question, and I'd be happy to find out for you. I do know we're not sure how the granulated activated carbon will work with petroleum. As you know, petroleum's sticky. We don't know how long they can use the big filters that they have without having to get new filters in there. You know, how much water can you get through it before you need to replace it? So we're not 100% sure. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll just have to kind of wait and see how the numbers come out. They're required to do all this testing along with it and send the test results into the DOH, and then DOH has been sending out news releases on what's going on. We know it works in Central and North Shore. Not so sure how it's going to work with the hydrocarbons, and we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Thanks, Gary.
I have a couple questions in chats having to do with incentives, whether the Board of Water Supply is planning to do any incentives for for people to take out lawns, put in native plants and drip irrigation, or install water catchment for use in the yards.
Okay. We do have a very robust water barrel program that we offer a $40 rebate on the water barrel, and we'll work with you to help set it up and things like that. And it's on our website, borderwatersupply.com. Pretty much everything I'm saying tonight, you can find on our website. We have a really good website, full of lots of good information. We currently have a clothes washer incentive. I don't know that we're looking at other consumer incentives for like low flow shower heads and things like that. One of the biggest incentives though is just plain old conservation. Like I said, when we did our water rate study a few years ago, we actually added a new tier when we did our cost of service study, and we found out that 10% of our customers, and we have about 170,000 customers, that's residential, commercial, and government, and agriculture. And 170,000 of them, 10% of them actually use less than 2,000 gallons a month of water. So we decided to put up a tier of less than cost of service. It's below cost to serve that water to you for the first 2,000 gallons, and everybody, all of our customers get that cost, and it's like about $3.80 some cents. So your first 2,000 gallons of water are below cost for everybody. But the biggest thing is, and I apologize because you guys are on the sewer system, and there is nothing I can do about the sewer system and the cost. And I know you guys have fixed costs. So I do get this, like why you can make your water bill go smaller with smart conservation. There's nothing we can do about the sewer. And I do know the sewer is about 2/3 of your bill versus the water. The other thing is we do have a water irrigation controller program. It helps you monitor so you don't overwater your yard, and that's about $100. And again, our rebates are on our website. And I do believe we're going to be looking at some additional ones, but the most powerful incentive is just conserve. Don't run the faucet when you're brushing your teeth or washing your hands. Turn off the shower when you're showering, and then turn it back on to rinse your hair and things like that. And a leaky toilet is actually a huge water waster. I had a leaky toilet, got it fixed, and I saved like $20 a month. It was crazy.
Wow.
And always check your water bill, because you never know. That's a great way, especially a single family home. If you have pipes and stuff, you could spring a leak and not know about it. And one day you get your water bill and you're like, oh my God, my water bill, 10,000 gallons. How did I use that? Well, it's because you probably have a leak. We'll work with you, try to locate the leak, and then you can bring your plumber in, and then they can fix the leak. And then we will give you a 50% leak adjustment for that if you find it and you fix it. And we are trying to be a little more aggressive or assertive in working with people to get leaks and things filled, especially now with this whole Red Hill issue going on. It's more important than ever that we pay attention to watching our water use and taking care of those things. But if anyone's got any great ideas, you can call me at 808-748-5319, and I'd love to hear them. You know, we're not the be all and end all of ideas, and we would love to hear from you.
So one more quick question, and then we'll go to Alice. Do you know if the Navy divers have cleaned up the contamination in the Red Hill Shaft? We were all watching that on TV. So
yeah, we have not heard. My guess is probably not. I'm just speculating when I say that, but since we haven't heard anything from them, they're probably still going in there and cleaning. We did hear that they're just about ready to perhaps to start that pump and treat at Red Hill Shaft with the granulated carbon filters that they put in, that they may be getting very close to starting that up, and then we'll see what happens.
okay, Alice?
Yes, this is not directly on point for the Red Hill issue, but I've always been curious, and I'm not even sure it's possible to come to this. How much rainfall do we need, let's say at current population levels on Oahu, to maintain our water stores kind of at the current level? Is there such a calculation or a figure at the Board of Water Supply? We know that February is our wettest month, and we're all saying, well, it's not too pleasant to be outside, but it's good for our water storage.
Yeah.
And I've been through the Waihee tunnels. It's fascinating, but I'm curious how much it takes in annual rainfall for, let's say, island-wide. I know that it must vary from area to area, but how much would it take?
You know, unfortunately, ma'am, I can't answer that. I do know we do track the monthly. We have a 5-month moving average, and like for December, we were 296% above, like 100 being normal. So above that, we were like 196 above normal. And it was, we all know, December was an extremely wet month. This month, I don't think we're even going to hit the 100 mark, but you have to look at it over a long-term period, not just monthly. And we do see over time decreasing rainfall, especially on the west side of the island. And so it does cause us concern. And, you know, we've been working, my friend Charlotte was here. I see Joe Jordan. And we are working with that community on some long-term, hopefully potential solutions. I know Joe and her team have been up. Mohala Ikabai have done a wonderful job up in the side of the Waianaes there in replenishing the watershed with native plants and vegetation and things like that. And it's those kinds of activities are going to help us in the long term. So a big shout out. I just want to acknowledge the hard work that they do. But I wish I could. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for you, but I'd be happy to check into it. It's a great question, and I can find out and get back to Andrea.
There's nothing immediately riding on it. It's just been a point of curiosity.
No, it's a great question. And I don't know that there is a magic number. It's just that, we do watch it. We track it regularly. And, last year we had a couple of really good months, and then we had like good 6 months of well under average rainfall. And so, yes, we do watch that. Right now, we're not in any we're not in a drought at all. And I think last year, maybe only very small parts of the island were in a drought. We're not like Maui or the Big Island that don't have as secure water resources as we do. And now we're not in a drought at all. We've done, especially after we had like 2 or 3 really good months of rain. November was good, December was great. And that helps a great deal. And kind of keeps us, it all averages out and evens out. But that's a great question, Alice. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's actually a great segue to the next question. It has to do, the question is, does the Board of Water Supply have an estimate of the population and visitor carrying capacity of our aquifer? Meaning, how many people can we serve and remain safely sustainable, especially with climate change?
That's a great question, and we're actually looking into those things. I don't have an answer for you. I apologize, but we do, as you know, if any of you know Barry Usagawa, he's been worked very closely with people like Chip Fletcher over at the university and Tom Gianbaluca to talk about these things about climate change. It's something that we take into consideration in our planning, and when we're looking at areas for development, when people come in with their permits. One thing I'll tell you right now, we've sent letters out to people saying, you know, given the current circumstances, if you're looking to build, and this isn't for people who already have their permits in, these are people who are like maybe in the very early planning stages. If you're looking to build something, you better come and talk to us first, because we don't know if we can't turn Halawa Shaft back on. We got to look at what we can do long term. So you're right. We are looking at those questions. We are looking at not overextending and pumping more than we absolutely have to. We want to stay within the limits that we currently have. Back in pre-contact days, Oahu was the gathering place, and the Hawaiian sustained a population very close to what we have today. So we do know that what we currently have will sustain what we currently have on island, including visitors coming on a daily basis. But we're trying to be smarter and not always think about if they build it, they will come kind of attitude. But let's look at, is this project, you know, can we fulfill a water need for this project? And we look at it, we run models, we look at what we do, we look at like what we expect is going to happen down the road, those kinds of things to ensure that we're not overextending our resources. So we have a whole department that does nothing but planning and review on these types of things.
Thank you. Next one is actually a series of question suggestions. So
Great.
You might want to take notes.
I am, I got my pen.
So the first one was just a suggestion based on the fact a lot of people actually don't know about Red Hill. Have you thought about putting more updates inside the monthly bill?
Yeah, actually our next issue of Water Matters, the front will be all about Red Hill. And we do Red Hill updates regularly in our insert that we send out. Yes, thank you for that. It's an excellent suggestion. We've also done a couple letters over the years where my boss has written letters updating people as well. However, that only works if you get a water bill. If you don't get a water bill, you aren't going to see this information. So we do encourage people to go to our website at borderwatersupply.com. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing a rather robust communications outreach. You'll be seeing us on TV, radio, and some other places. We're leveraging all of our relationships to get out there and talk to people, just to give them regular tips and updates and things like that. So you will be able to sign up for a newsletter. We'll be advertising that as well. But that, yeah, I hear you. Thank you. Great idea.
Another part of that was also explain the amount of activated charcoal everyone is paying for the chemicals being sprayed in EVA.
I'm trying to remember. I want to say, and this is total dollars for not just EVA, but for Central and North Shore. I want to say it's a couple $1 million a year that we have to budget for our activated granulated carbon, because to do the petrochemicals. Yeah. So it's not inexpensive, but it's a cost that we do because it's the right thing to do. And, you know, we got to keep the water safe.
I guess the question then is anything being done to maybe get a handle on those chemicals?
Well, unfortunately, they are already in the water, which is not a good thing. And, you know, over what happened back in, and this is, I wasn't with obviously the Board of Water Supply back then, I was way younger. But what they were noticing when they were doing the water sampling and testing for the various chemicals, they noticed that things like atrazine, which is the one that always comes to mind for me, wasn't depleting, it wasn't dissipating, it wasn't like getting lower, you know, it wasn't going anywhere. And So through some other efforts, they brought in granulated activated carbon, and it takes it all out, it cleans it up, and gets everything down to where it needs to be and keeps the water safe. I drink my water. I live North Shore, and I had drink the water all the time and never had a problem. So unfortunately, these are chemicals, and this is again why we're so concerned about Red Hill. Is we already have experience with chemicals that are not dissipating. We have experience with having to deal with the pump and treat, and the petrochemicals are a whole new level of that we don't even have experience of. We have experience with the agrochemicals, but not with petrochemicals. And it's a whole new level of, oh my gosh, what do you do? You know, how do you treat this? How do you get it out? And that's the fear that we have, is that, you know, we already know the Red Hill shaft is contaminated, which means that the area around it is contaminated. And that's why we do not want to keep pulling it over to our side of the aquifer, over to Halawa Shaft. So it's a big concern, because we don't know what it would take to get it out and how much it would cost if we have to put in a pump and treat. And we are actively looking at remediation. We don't have the problem now, and God willing, we never will. But we can't pretend that we can't look at it. We have to look at solutions now and start thinking about the long term and what it would cost and how we would do it and where we would site a facility and all that other stuff. And my boss actually started doing this years ago. He started planning for these kinds of scenarios.
Well, that ties in nicely to our final question. Have you considered asking for 20 to 25% security deposit from the Navy for the amount that has been taken away from the public, and also a revolving fund to secure as insurance for the anticipated large leaks that we know are coming? All leaks seem on schedule.
Yeah, actually, we've sent a letter to the president, 2 letters to the president. We've already alerted all of the congressionals. We've had talks with a lot of our leaders. And yes, we will be presenting a bill. Those are great suggestions, and I will take them back to my boss. But yes, we're with you. Our people need to be compensated. Sorry, my cat. The people need to be compensated for this. This is not something we caused. This is not something that we should bear the long-term cost burden for. And so, yes, we will be presenting a bill.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I think we got through everything that was in chat. Did anyone else have any questions? No. If not, thank you, Kathleen.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight, everybody. I really do. And anything you need, again, 808-748-5319 is my direct line, and give me a call. Thank you.